Hello, my friends, and welcome once again to the terrifying Vaughn Manor. So today, we're talking about movies once again. Another ridiculous top 10 list. Now, last week, I did my 10 favorite horror movies of the 20th century. That was that last century that wasn't all that great, and yet somehow better than the one we're in now, which is the 21st century. And that's what we're talking about this week. My top 10 favorite horror movies of the 21st century. So yes, my top 10 favorite horror movies. These horror movies are a little bit different than the ones I talked about last week, the classic horror movies. But the 21st century, I have to say, has been pretty good for horror movies. Horror movies throughout the last 20 years, they've been pretty good, or there have at least been a lot of really good horror movies. One of the things I remember so well from the 20th century is the plethora of awful horror movies. There are awful horror movies in the last 20 years, don't get me wrong. But there were a lot of them in the 20th century. We just don't remember those. But there's been a lot of good stuff the last 20 years. So I'm going to go 10 to 1 as we do in these lists. I've got everything written down so I don't screw up too badly. I am letting you know right now that number 1 is going to be a little controversial. There is a question whether number 1 is even a horror movie. I think it is, but there is a question. People have different ideas about that film. But we'll get to that when we get to number 1. Now, we're at number 10. And number 10 is Absentia from 2010. Absentia from 2010. This was directed by Mike Flanagan, who went on to do many other great films in the horror genre. Now this one was pretty low budget. I think it cost about $75.80, but a really, really good movie. I remember watching this and being surprised at how good it was and how it wasn't what I expected it to be. I can't really talk about the plot too much of this one because I don't want to give it away. It looks, when I went into this movie, it looked like basically kind of like, I thought it was a ghost movie. I thought it was a supernatural haunting movie or something like that. It's something very different. This movie moves into Lovecraftian territory. Absentia from 2010. Really good one from Mike Flanagan. That's number 10. If you haven't seen it, watch it. I can see how you might have missed it because it wasn't a big movie at all. It was, I guess, kind of a smaller film, a smaller low-budget film, but really good. Absentia, so that was that. Number 9 is the movie that made me never want to go into a cave ever again, and that would be The Descent. The Descent from 2005. That was directed by Neil Marshall, the guy that did the werewolf classic Dog Soldiers. And he did Centurion later on, too, which was kind of a fun Roman Western. But this one, The Descent, excellent. Again, this kind of has some Lovecraftian overtones in a different way. Some ladies are journeying into caves because they cave dive. That's their thing. And things go horribly wrong because, you go into these caves and if you just, happen to get trapped in these caves and, there might be some horrible, I know, even my dog is terrified. There might be some horrible humanoid type creatures down there. This is a theme that we see often in horror stories. But this was the best movie I've seen on this theme. Great movie. A lot of fun, The Descent. And, kind of grim. Gets pretty grim in this movie. But pretty exciting and very frightening. Excellent creature effects for what it was. I don't think this movie had too high of a budget either. So I believe it was all practical effects in this. It looked that way. It was good stuff. The Descent came out in 2005, and it's been a while since I've seen it. It lives on in my memory, but I ought to watch it again. Maybe I'd have a different opinion, but I remember it being pretty great, and it's one of my favorites. So that was number 9, which brings me to number 8. The Mist from 2007, directed by Frank Darabont. The Mist. This was a good one, based off of one of Stephen King's best stories, in my opinion. One of my favorite stories, The Mist. So they made this good movie and a really terrible television show recently. But the movie was awful good. It follows the story really well. A lot of CGI effects in this one, but they seem to work for the most part. There's some dodgy moments in it, but it's a cheesy creature movie in a way. That's part of what this movie is. This is a cheesy monster movie. So it kind of works, but it's a little bit more than that. And like I said, it follows Stephen King's story pretty well. And it has a lot of the Stephen King stuff that you expect from a Stephen King story. So it's one of the better Stephen King movies. And the ending, so grim and terrible and magnificent. They actually changed the ending from the ending in the story. But the ending is actually suggested by a line from the story. But I don't want to give it away because it's a powerful ending. And it makes the movie, in my opinion. So that was number 8. That was The Mist, which brings me to the extra creepy number 7, which is The Autopsy of Jane Doe from 2016, directed by Andre Ovredel? I'm probably mispronouncing that. I can't pronounce anything. But The Autopsy of Jane Doe, another movie that kind of surprised me. I walked into this not knowing too much about it. I knew a little, and I'm kind of like, well, how are they going to make that story work? Trust me, they make this story work. It's just what it says it is. It is about an autopsy of a Jane Doe, but it goes horribly wrong in the most horrific way. This movie was kind of a big deal for a short time. It got a lot of good press, I think, The Autopsy of Jane Doe, when it came out. I'm not sure if people remember it too well now. I have no idea. But it's really worth saying. It's a really good movie. I really liked it a lot. I've seen it a couple times. I will probably see it a few more times because it's that good. Really like that one. The Autopsy of Jane Doe, which brings me to number 6. This is kind of a predictable number 6 because, of course, there has to be something zombie in here. There's been too many zombie movies and too much zombies. There's been let's just face it, this century there's been too much zombies. Last century had just the right amount of zombies. So I'm kind of surprised at myself that there's even a zombie one on here, but this one is really good. Forget all those other zombie movies and see Train to Busan. That was a really good movie, Train to Busan. Not the original title, I don't believe. That's the English title of this movie. Don't know what the original title is. I should have looked that up. Came out in 2016, directed by Song Ho-yeon. Don't know how to pronounce that, but it might be that. Song Ho-yeon, maybe. Did a heck of a movie, that guy. If it was a guy, I don't even know that. But it was an excellent movie. Really good zombie movie. Again, another movie that a lot of people have heard of because it's so good. Kind of a standout zombie movie. And it's because of the human characters in this film. We have some very human characters with human flaws, but also relatable people in this movie. And kind of heart-wrenching in a way. It was moving in a way I didn't expect. I expected just a fun zombie movie. And it was that. But it was also pretty moving. Yeah, it was good. It was a lot better than I expected. And I had heard it was good. And yeah, another movie I could watch more than a few times, probably. Really liked it, Train to Busan. which brings us to number 5. And this movie, man, this movie is Hereditary from 2018 by Ari Aster. Hereditary. Wow, is this movie good? This is one of those movies I can't really talk about the plot too much. Definitely, the ending to this movie, great. This movie is really, really good. A lot of twists that you don't see coming, at least I didn't. Really, genuinely scary. Some great gross out moments, too. Famously, this director also did Midsummer, which is another good movie. Really good movie. Not quite good enough, in my opinion, to make it on this list as far as my favorites. But remember, these are my favorites. These aren't the best. But this one is awful good. And I think this one is better than Midsummer, in my opinion. This is better than most horror movies, in my opinion. Hereditary. Man, that movie worked. That went scary. So that was Hereditary, which brings us to number 4. And this is a favorite of mine. This has been a favorite of mine for a long time. This one came out in 2014. It Follows from 2014. I feel like it came out. I feel like it's older than that, but I guess it's not. It's 2014. Directed by David Robert Mitchell. If I've got that right, It Follows. Excellent movie. Another movie a lot of people have heard of. There are a lot of really interesting things about this movie. First of all, it's my favorite sexually transmitted curse movie. It's a really good one of those. And the horrible thing, because that's what it is. It's a horrible thing in this movie. The horrible thing is really an interesting horrible thing. That's hunting down and stalking the victim of the curse in this film. Now, there are people that don't like it so much because I've heard more than once that there are rules for this thing that are set out that the thing doesn't seem to follow. Kind of bends the rules, but that's okay. That's actually made it better for me, because it made this thing unpredictable. And how would you just know all the rules for this thing anyway? It's scary. It's really, really a creepy movie, It Follows. And I like the feel of it. It takes place in an indeterminate time, kind of a never-never-land time as far as technology is concerned. It's interesting the way that is done. Yeah, It Follows. Genuinely a great movie. Which brings us to number 3. And number 3 is one of my favorite vampire films ever. Could be one of the best vampire films ever. And that is Let the Right One In from 2008. Directed by Thomas Alfredson. You know me, I can't pronounce anything. But Let the Right One In from 2008. Excellent, excellent movie. They did an totally unnecessary remake of this in English, which was pretty good, actually. But it wasn't as good as this. And there was really no reason for it. This movie is great on its own and probably should have stayed on its own. But it's an excellent vampire movie. Very different, which kind of tackles some pretty tricky subjects. Bullying and some other things. Based off a really, really good book whose author I can't remember right now. But it was really good, actually. But excellent film. Excellent vampire movie. It's kind of an essential vampire movie, I kind of feel like. It's kind of an essential horror movie in a way. It came out in 2008, but it's already kind of a classic in its way, I kind of feel anyway. So yeah, that was my number 3. I like that one an awful lot. Number 2. This is kind of a divisive one. I've heard a lot of people really, really love this movie. And a lot of people just don't like it at all. Some people have even said it's boring. But, you guys are crazy who say that. Maybe a little crazy. No, this movie's really good, and it's really scary. And it's got the John over at Books of Blood is always talking about this movie. And he's right. This movie is every bit as good as he says it is. This is The Witch from 2015. directed by Robert Eggers. Say what you like about his directing style, but this movie is freaky. The Witch. About a Puritan family who's too religious even for the Puritans, and so they get kicked out, exiled from the town, and have to go and live near the woods by themselves. And well, the title kind of gives it away, what might be lurking out there in the woods. And boy, is this movie creepy. This movie, it's genuinely frightening. I don't know, maybe I'm just easily creeped out by some things, but this movie, and it has a happy ending, you know, so it's uplifting too. Literally uplifting at the end. Just, you know, happy ending to The Witch. At least there's that. So that was number 2. So now we're going to get to number 1, which, as I told you, might be controversial because it's an open question whether it's even a horror movie. I think it's a horror movie. If it's not a horror movie, I don't know what kind of movie it is, because it is genuinely unsettling and at times frightening. But it's genuinely unsettling in the best way. In my opinion, it's a fantastic movie. It's a great movie. It could be my favorite movie. It could be the best movie, actually. I'm not sure how many people will agree with that. But I think it might be the best movie. It might be the best movie I've seen. We'll see. Number 1, Mulholland Drive from 2001, directed by the great David Lynch. Now, here's the thing with David Lynch. Either you like him and his stuff or you don't. I happen to like David Lynch an awful lot. He makes movies. He makes films like nobody else. And this movie is something else. It's definitely my favorite David Lynch movie. And like I said, it could be my favorite movie. They're just genuinely unsettling and mysterious and strange. Like a lot of his films, it leaves you pondering on it long after it's done. You ponder on it while you're watching it because you're trying to figure out, okay, what's going on? And even though you don't know what's going on, what you do figure out is unsettling enough. It's great, this movie, in my opinion. I love Mulholland Drive. And I think it is a horror movie. Let me know what you might think in the comments down below. I'm sure there will be opinions. But for me, horror all the way. And it's great. So that was my top 10 favorite horror movies from the 21st century. I hope you enjoyed it. It was kind of fun to do these for the last couple weeks in celebration of the spooky season. We will continue on in the spooky theme next week. We are going to go back to books next week when I talk about the top 10 greatest horror writers of all time. Yes. The top 10 greatest horror writers of all time. You'll definitely want to stick around for that one. Okay, my friends, I will catch you next time here. Actually, wait. I might not be here next time. I might be at the Rustic Vaughan Lodge. But at one of these places, you'll catch me. You guys have a great day.